Ah, Laravel. If you're a web developer, you definitely know the name. It's an absolute giant in the PHP world, and for good reason. It's famous for being elegant, powerful, and just a joy to use. But here's the thing, with all that power comes some hidden peril. So today, we're going to look at what makes Laravel so great, and, more importantly, the critical security risks you absolutely need to avoid. Building a modern web application from scratch it's a monumental task. You've got databases, user accounts, routing, security, the list just goes on and on. And writing that same basic code every single time, it's a total waste of time. It's kind of like trying to build a car by literally forging every single screw yourself. Why would you do that?
And that's exactly where web frameworks come into play. They are the solution. Think of a framework as a professional mechanics toolkit for that car. It gives you the solid chassis, the engine block, all the standard parts you need, so you can focus on what makes your car special. The cool design, the custom features, the stuff your users are actually going to care about.
And that brings us to Laravel. Created way back in 2011 by Taylor Otwell, it just exploded onto the scene. And its tagline, the PHP framework for web artisans, well, that tells you everything you need to know about its whole philosophy. It's all about making the code elegant and making the developer experience feel less like a grind and more like a craft. And believe me, this is no niche tool. We are talking about massive, massive scale here. Right now, over 1.5 million websites all across the globe are built with Laravel. We're talking e-commerce giants, social networks, complex business systems. Laravel is the engine quietly running under the hood of a huge part of the web. And this slide right here, this really puts Laravel's dominance into perspective. It commands nearly 36% of the entire PHP framework market. Now, for a developer, that number is huge. What it really means is there's an enormous active community out there creating tutorials, packages, and solving problems. So if you ever get stuck, chances are someone has already figured it out and shared the answer. So what's the secret sauce? What really makes Laravel so special? Well, it's this mix of powerful features that just makes sense. Blade, for instance, lets you write super clean HTML without all that messy PHP code mixed in. Eloquent lets you talk to your database using simple, readable commands instead of writing complex SQL queries. Artisan is this amazing command line helper that automates all the boring, repetitive jobs. And it's all built on this MVC pattern, which is just a fancy way of saying it helps you keep your code organized. It just works. But here's the twist. Having the best tools in the world doesn't automatically make you a master craftsman. The very same features that make Laravel so powerful and so flexible can, if you're not careful, open up some really serious security holes. And this quote right here, it hits the nail on the head. We always imagine hackers in dark rooms as the main threat, right? But the reality is, most data leaks happen because of simple internal mistakes. A setting that was overlooked, a file that was misconfigured, a password shared the wrong way. The biggest threat is often already inside the building. Okay, so how do we actually protect our app? We're going to break it down into 3 critical security rules that will help you turn your Laravel application into an absolute fortress. All right, rule number 1 is all about the foundation. Before you write a single line of application code, you have to lock down the environment where it lives and breathes. If you get this part wrong, trust me, pretty much everything else you do won't matter. Just look at these 4 things. They're simple, but they make a massive difference. Your .env file, that holds your database passwords, your API keys, all your secrets. Committing that to a public code repository is literally like posting your house keys on Instagram. And that app debug setting? Oh man, leaving that turned on in production can expose your entire application's inner workings to an attacker. Simple mistakes, huge, huge consequences. Okay, so once your environment is secure, the next step is to control who gets into your app and, crucially, what they're allowed to do once they're inside. Think of it like building really strong doors and hiring some very smart bouncers. Laravel policies are the perfect example of this. I want you to think of them as the bouncer at a super exclusive nightclub. So a user tries to edit a blog post. The policy steps in and asks, hey, are you on the guest list? Are you actually the author of this post? If the answer is no, it's simple. Access denied. It's just a really clean, central way to manage all the permissions for the sensitive parts of your app. But just one bouncer isn't enough, right? You need layers of security at the front door. Rate limiting stops attackers from just sitting there guessing passwords thousands of times. CSRF protection makes sure that when a request comes in, it's legit and it's actually coming from your app. And look, in this day and age, you absolutely have to use multi-factor authentication. A password by itself, it just doesn't cut it anymore. So this brings us to our final rule, and you could argue it's the most important one of all. You have to assume that every single piece of data coming from a user, whether it's from a form, an API, a file upload, whatever, is malicious until you have proven it's safe. This mindset is the absolute cornerstone of a strong defense inside your code. So here's the critical three-step flow you need to remember. First, validate everything that comes in. Is this actually an email address? Is this number in the range I expect? Second, you have to guard how that data gets saved. By defining which fields are fillable, you stop a clever user from trying to sneakily make themselves an admin. And third, you have to sanitize everything that goes back out. Imagine a user saves a malicious script as their profile name. Without escaping, the next person to view that profile could get their account hijacked. Using Blade's little double curly braces, W, GR, it just prevents that. Full stop. Now, if you follow those three rules, you are going to be in a very, very strong position. But the real goal here isn't just about ticking off a few boxes on a checklist. It's about adopting a proactive security mindset, because security is not a one-time setup. It's a continuous process, a habit that has to be woven into your everyday workflow. And this is what that looks like in practice. It means making security part of your routine. Every day, you run a quick scan for known vulnerabilities in your project's dependencies. Every week, you update your packages. You're continuously writing automated tests that check for security flaws. And once a year, you bring in an outsider to do a formal audit. It's this constant cycle of vigilance that keeps you safe as the threats out there evolve. So we'll leave you with this one question to think about. When you're building your next project, or even when you look at your current one, is security a core feature you plan for from day one, just like anything else? Or is it something you kind of hope to bolt on at the very end? Because in modern web development, an afterthought? Well, an afterthought is just too late.